Thanks for joining, Amelia. Do you have your audio on? No, you don't.
Hello.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect.
I was gonna mute myself. Is it noisy?
Yeah, no problem. It's 3 o'clock, so we can get started now. Uh-oh. Just a second. All right, it's 3 o'clock, June 11th. So welcome. This is at Learn Bioscience's first virtual meeting. This seminar is entitled Power and Leadership in STEM. And so before we lead off with any other discussions today with our presentation, I'd like to say first and foremost that our viewers are our priority. I mean, your health and safety is very essential to us. We're going through a new normal where we're tackling issues like the coronavirus that's affecting all communities around the world. And the impact that this virus has had has really emphasized the importance of health professionals as well as many professionals within the realm of STEM. And now more than ever, we need a new generation of leaders to pick up in a post-COVID world. So for introduction, my name is Jarron Sorrell. I'm the CEO of At Learn Bioscience, and we are joined today with Amelia, who's the Chief Marketing Officer. We began Bioscience Academy, if I can get my slideshow, there we go, my slideshow running, as a company of educators using social media to network leaders within an industry, to provide access to STEM learning resources and promote leadership in the community. This role that we're taking on is vitally essential because we are embarking in a digital world where virtual learning will become more mainstream. And we're already seeing that trend follow in the wake of COVID-19. It's my personal belief that the trend will pick up dramatically over time, and we want to be able to service as many underserved communities as possible, and we really vitally believe that this digital medium can do that. So let's just talk about what we do as a company. As a company, we enable young leaders. During my career as a STEM instructor, I've had the chance to really provide access to both digital and hands-on resources in a non-traditional school setting. I personally work at the Boys and Girls Club, so many of the children here today are some of the kids that I work with on an everyday basis. What's really vital about my style of education is that these resources have to be inexpensive and accessible. If the resources are too expensive or too hard to come by, it really doesn't serve the purpose of leveling the playing field for the most underrepresented and underserved children, those being usually Black and brown students in underserved communities. So in this example, we see girls completing an hour of code to create an app. Now more than ever, we have an urgent need for diversity in STEM. Just recently, Elon Musk launched a historical flight in partnership with NASA Falcon 9 carrying a large payload, and it sort of got brushed off in the memory of what was going on with the rioting and protests and the tragedy of George Floyd. But in the aftermath of this confusion and chaos, we see STEM professionals, particularly Black professionals, speaking out against racism in new and creative ways. So just recently, there was an article today entitled "Black Engineers See Both Pride and Exclusion in the Return of Human Spaceflight." And this really sort of embodies where we are today, not only as a STEM community, but as a Black community. We're seeing rapid advancements in technology, in engineering, in the sciences, but we're really seeing a sort of stagnation and a regression towards sort of the more negative parts of our history as a Black community. And what I believe that At Learn Bioscience can do is connect those those educators, the companies that are involved in spearheading grassroots organizations that are helping our communities the most. So the need to be heard is a desire more than ever. Just recently as of yesterday, on June 10th, an effort organized by over 3,000 Black physical scientists and allies called on the research community across the country to specific actions to combat anti-Black racism. So essentially this movement was called #ShutDownSTEM. And what that entailed for these Black scientists was to refuse to come into work. And that made a really powerful statement that we could collectively use our voice to speak against injustices that are going on in our communities. And I believe that this digital medium that we use, our laptops or phones, is the perfect testing grounds for new innovative ways to solve many of these issues. So what are our kids facing? What is their future looking like? Why do we need more Black leaders in STEM more than ever? Well, you may not have heard of the fourth industrial revolution. And in this fourth industrial revolution, we have to first peel the pages of history back towards what the very first industrial revolution was. That was the age of mechanical production, water and steam engines. Those were back in the day around the 1800s when the biggest names in the industry arose. That would be the Andrew Carnegies of the world, the Henry Fords, etc. Later on in the second industrial revolution, we saw the drive for electric powered assembly lines, mass production. We started to get our first mass produced cars from Henry Ford. And the second industrial revolution essentially created the template for the modern day workforce, if you really want to think about it, because the reason why we have a weekday and a 5-day week, work week, and essentially a 40-hour work week is because Henry Ford made that standard. So when we talk about leadership, that's what kind of impact our leaders can have, a generation-long impact that is the bedrock of our economy today. The third revolution was around the 1970s when we began to automate our processes with computerization and electronics. So now more than ever, our Black leaders are needed to contribute to this fourth industrial revolution. This fourth industrial revolution is a cyber revolution, a digital transformation that's primarily focused on decentralized organizations instead of centralized organizations. And what that means for this generation of intellectuals is that our intellectual property rights are going to be vital for remaining relevant in an age of automation. If the Black community fails to contribute to the fourth industrial revolution, we might get left behind the machines that we're hired to build. And that's where I feel like the biggest problems lie, and also where the largest opportunities lie ahead. So young leaders prove digital learning can be hands-on, fun, and focused. We're not just trying to be a textbook salesman service. We're trying to be a holistic solution, especially to the problems in the traditional school system where the kids basically are doing the same thing that Horseman created several centuries ago in terms of the schooling, in terms of how kids are graded, etc. Here, we see kids learning by doing. So for this example, I had a large group of children, and the girls were really excited about this project. I created a project called Bit Strings, and the lesson behind this was talking about binary numbers. They were able to use black and white beads to represent ones and zeros to create their names. And that is such a foundational lesson in computer science down the line, because what they're learning quite immediately is that everything is a number. And because everything is a number, they have to understand how vital mathematics is going forward if they want to explore a computer science profession. So what is exactly in store for our future leaders? A new reality unfolds in STEM where boys and girls will be enabled, and they'll be able to explore using the latest digital technologies and learning tools. Gone are the days of highlighters and textbooks. For many of these kids, they're able to hit Control F on a massive textbook document in a PDF and find exactly what they need. They don't exactly need the guidance of an instructor to do that. If they are empowered with the tools to self-educate themselves, well, that's a 0-to-1 event for us as a company and as a community. So it's all about working together as professionals and as a community to get our kids engaged and using their tools that they have around the house in a creative and productive manner. So here's essential. So getting to the meat and potatoes of our conversation about what tools are best practices, if you will, for really evoking the creativity, the passion, the thoughtfulness that needs to go behind engineering and science. I've decided to split the conversation up between 3 different projects. Let's call it Project X, Project R, and Project P. So Project X models the building blocks of life science. Each of the products that I'm about to present you are fairly reasonable value for what exactly each product can provide as a learning experience. So these building blocks by Amido are building blocks that can improve artistic knowledge and skills of 3-dimensional modeling. These are really important skills because as a biochemist, I was introduced to computer software called PyMol. And this PyMol software essentially is a digital 3-dimensional modeling software for large macromolecules like proteins, DNA, smaller molecules. And scientists use this molecular modeling software to be able to predict exactly how medicines will react with these large molecules. But imagine just for the price of $15, you're introducing your young leaders to these concepts in a really non-intimidating way. Next, which I believe is really essential for um, any scientist or any budding scientist, is a molecular modeling kit, a formal one that um, college students like myself have used reliably over the years. These molecular modeling kits are representative of how elements bond to each other. Really vital stuff. Because, you know, from my own personal experience in chemistry, it's really tough remembering how many bonds oxygen will have versus a fluorine versus a carbon, and then you have to sort of figure out the shape of a sigma bond versus a pi bond. That's really heavy stuff, and so being able to provide sort of a bridge um, to that world of chemistry can unlock a million doors if they are at least able to think about what a bond is materially or physically, or think about what does a torsion angle mean when you actually twist this model around. That it provides a different learning experience that no textbook can really provide. So, oh, excuse me. And finally, for the more advanced learners, there are more sophisticated models like the Molymod 12-layer DNA double helix. This double helix is pretty accurate um, for the structure of DNA. It's still a cartoon, but it still conveys all of the important elements of DNA, that being the sugar backbone, the nucleotides, how the groove, there's a minor groove and a major groove, as you can see. Um, and so if you combine these tools together, you're able to make a really comprehensive life science experiment for less than the price of a textbook, quite honestly. But it's a hands-on experience that kids will be able to relate to quite immediately. And that really is the point, being able to get kids as quickly into the sciences and as quickly as they can become passionate about these sciences as possible, because we are on a time limit. And finally, I did mention the PyMol software. It is free. It's an educational resource, so it's free for all users. If you want to pay for the premium, you can, but you really don't have to. Next is Project R. I believe that Project R levels the playing field with math games. Math games are incredibly important for our middle schoolers who are struggling with arithmetic. Uh, Studies show that kids that really struggle with arithmetic are almost always have difficulties in pre-calculus, geometry, trigonometry, etc., because they haven't mastered the mathematical language yet. They still haven't mastered what a fraction or an irrational number is. And that can really hold a child back if they don't have a creative way to solve their problem. It's a learning curve. We all know that math has a huge learning curve, but we need to be able to get them over that hump because math is so essential for almost every field in STEM. So here we have an example of a Moby game. This Moby game, you can think of it sort of like Scrabble with math. I think is a genius idea. As you can see, the math is pretty much, it reinforces math skills while helping to build confidence and social skills among children ages 6 and up. You can imagine that a large group of children can be playing this game at once if you have a really big bag. And it also makes math really unintimidating. I've encountered many kids that cannot solve these kinds of problems without needing some sort of special attention to help them over their learning curve. Next is a game called Prime Climb. This game focuses on really tough issues that separate really proficient students from students that need extra help through their career, through their schooling. This game emphasizes on multiplication, division, factorization being a big hurdle, and prime number concepts being another big hurdle. So if once they're able to understand factorization and prime numbers, they're really ready to move on towards more algebra-based learning, towards trigonometry, even towards the pre-calculus levels. Next are a variety of different card games that I thought were really interesting. They're called math stacks. They're basically they're flashcards for math. There's one for geometry, fraction equivalence, and place value to the millions. Really important because I've encountered many fifth graders that just don't know the tens place up to the millions. They get stuck around the hundreds and they can't really conceptualize past thousands, which is really alarming and something that we have to nip in the bud if we want them to excel within the STEM fields. Finally, we have Project P. Project P provides an endless engineering challenge for our youth. Excuse me. Sorry, it's a hold up with the slide again. Let's see if it works. There we go. So we have one tool that I've used that really works is the Snap Circuit tool. It's just for $21, you get a full circuit board that has over 100 electronic projects in it. A great value for the price. It comes with 30 plus pieces, motors, fans, circuit breakers. It's really a one-stop shop for the future engineers and mechanists. And it really is really an essential hands-on activity for this sort of field. We also have more rudimentary articles like the cozy engineering building blocks. This is really more tailored for our younger audiences, really sort of like reducing their creativity, getting their problem solving skills strengthened by being able to connect different pieces together in a logical manner and creating a desired structure like a car or a crane or an animal or anything of that sort can really help mold their STEM critical thinking skills. And I just really think they're kind of cool. And we also have magnetiles. I think these were my favorite. They're magnetic building sets. They engage young minds by fusing together math, science, and creativity. Magnetism is a really important property of nature that physicists and engineers exploit all the time for various reasons, like anything like electricity generation, engineering, space crafts, etc. It's really important. It also really engages their their understanding of geometry, breaking down those barriers when it comes to conceptualizing three-dimensional objects on a two-dimensional plane. It was really hard for us, so you can only imagine what it's like for our children. So when we're talking about leadership and the powers that STEM can provide for our community, we really have to come together as a community and ask, how else can you help us imagine serving our kids the best way we can? Many of them are so excited to be able to have goggles on and get their gloves on and just start mixing stuff. I love that. It makes my job hard when I have to clean it up, but I let them do it because it's creative. And it breaks down the barriers that so many of us know exist within the sciences when it's just sort of just a textbook. When you give the kids the opportunity to have that hands-on experience by melting a lollipop and making glass strings out of it and learning what an amorphous structure is versus a amorphous structure, learning the differences between a crystal and a non-crystal, learning that metals are crystals was a big wake up for them. Um, that really gets the gears in their heads turning, and that's really just the job of any STEM educator, is to ignite that passion that they all have and that natural curiosity that they have because they're so young. We want to foster that and grow that, because that youthful curiosity is such a huge asset in the STEM fields, because we don't have all the answers. Engineers need to come up with creative solutions all the time to complex problems. Scientists need to create hypotheses based on observations that may have never been seen before. And sometimes you just can't base all of your observations off of a book. You really have to be able to create new sort of explanations that are still rational, still logical, and or still have elements of critical thinking. So for us, STEM 2020 uh, is about getting that hands-on experience first and foremost, emphasizing safety, um, emphasizing control over exactly what that engagement like outcome is supposed to be. And in this case, I was able to teach boys and girls the transition states matter simply by melting a lollipop on a heat plate, and they had an amazing experience doing that. Um, a lot of them, when you ask them questions, are incredibly insightful and intelligent, and they'll give you smart answers to your questions. And that's just really the big gift of being an educator, is making them think, getting them to think outside of the book. So just to wrap things up for us, we really have to emphasize the role that digital technology will play for their learning experience. The traditional school experience has been gravely disrupted because of COVID, but I believe that the internet has really provided a level playing field for so many, this future generation of scientists and leaders within STEM, because anybody can access the internet. And where there is the internet, there is a treasure trove of knowledge. This treasure trove of knowledge is often free. There are websites like code.org that have hundreds of lessons teaching our kids the basics of JavaScript. I've used several different websites like grasshopper.io that I personally have used to teach myself JavaScript along with the kids. So when I'm learning how to code myself, and being able to interact with kids that are also learning how to code really helps me out a lot. Being able to learn how to solve problems for them and for myself. So I've gone on to learn how to code with Duke University using Coursera, which is a educational platform that you can use online. I've paid $50 a month for that. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I'm able to self-educate myself from the convenience and comfort of my home, just using my laptop and my phone. And I can do that anywhere. You don't need a school setting to be able to do that. And this is sort of the digital transformation that I mentioned previously, going forth into our fourth industrial revolution. Many of our leaders must be first and foremost self-educators and able to master and use the digital technology around that, and even be able to code new programs to exploit that technology is so vital for them going forward. So this is the conclusion to my spiel for At Learn Bioscience. I really appreciate all those that were able to attend and join us today. More content is coming out shortly, and we'll be sharing a lot more materials with you in the near future. So thank you so much for being able to attend, and please stay safe and healthy, and I really wish you all a good adieu. Thank you.